Hello, I'm Tim Rose. Welcome to this Future Net Zero video briefing, podcast, good old-fashioned chat, whatever you want to talk about, really. And one of the most important things is obviously our price of energy. Now, an election is looming, and as we head in towards the later part of this year, obviously there'll be lots of talk about where the price forecasts are, how we're going to cope through the winter. But one of the things that's increasing and will increase even more, depends not on who's in government, because it's a plan for both of the major parties, is how we transition to net zero. And that involves more and more different types of non-commodity charges. So what are they? What's coming down the line? And what do they mean for your business? Well, to help us navigate that, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Louise Hellyer, who's Commercial Risk Manager for Total Energies. Hello, Louise.
Hello.
Let's talk a little bit. Most people know what they are, but just in a very simple explanation for anyone who's new to this, what is a non-commodity charge? And in general, for a commercial business, how much of your bill is that?
So a non-commodity charge is literally anything that isn't commodity. So the commodity is like your energy, be it gas or electricity. So that's the part where you pay like market prices or prices that you've bought it at just for your energy itself. The non-commodity is everything else, be that transportation, be that levies that you've got to pay for government schemes, metering costs. There's all sorts of things that fall into that non-commodity basket. Now, proportions, it's obviously very difficult to say exactly the proportions, but as a very rough, some customers you're probably talking about maybe third half that you're talking on commodity, and then the rest is non-commodity based. But it does vary depending on what schemes you have, what prices you get for your energy part. So it is variable a little bit on that side of things.
I mean, it's one of those things that people have always said there needs to be a bit more clarity about. But it's vital, isn't it? I mean, because you have to pay for the power or the gas, whatever you're using to get to you. There's a cost for all that stuff to be pulled out the ground or, generated from wind or solar. And there's a cost for, as you say, the shipping and all of that. But the levies are an interesting thing because, as I said right at the beginning, it's a bit like petrol. When you go into the forecourt and you fill up, that a lot of what you're paying is tax, but that's for lots of different things. Both Labour and Tory, and we've had obviously Tory government for quite a while now, the levels of these levies have increased over the last decades. Is that really because this is the way that governments find to try and fund our transition to a lower carbon?
Yeah. I mean, the government has choices every time they want to do a scheme that requires some subsidies. And understandably, to get to net zero, they want to subsidise some of that generation, that investment that people are doing. They want to encourage it. Now, how that gets funded is government choice at the end of the day. They could choose to put that into general taxation. That isn't the approach they've tended to take to date. They've tended to put it onto your energy bills. Now, the majority of these levies sit within the electricity bills at the moment. And again, that's an area that has been debated. Should it start to move, that might encourage more uptake of some of the electric green options, particularly things like heat pumps for houses in the domestic sphere. If your electricity price was cheaper, might more people move from a gas boiler to a heat pump? But yet these levies are getting quite significant. And I'm sitting here ready to talk about some that are still on the horizon. We feel like we've already got a lot. Yes, one or two are slowly winding down, but they're not really out of the woods yet. So maybe moving some of those from one to the other might make changes, but really the majority sit in electricity at this current point in time.
Let's talk about the ones that you think might be coming. Now, we ought to caveat this because obviously we all know there's an election coming and who knows. But in general terms, governments, even if there is a change of government, they don't normally throw everything out straight away. There's some things. So let's talk about some of the levies you think may well continue, at least in the short term, that are on the horizon for most businesses to face. Can you give an example of one of them?
Absolutely. So one of them is around EII customers. So EII customers are those high energy intensive industries.
Right.
So they're using extra energy,
Yeah.
and the government have decided for alignment of pricing that they get some reductions in their bills and their costs.
So this is things like steel making, big gas works, things like that. Big,
Yeah.
heavy industry, yeah?
Yeah, exactly. They've recently announced that they're going to have additional reductions on some of their transportation charging. Now, they can start to apply for that now, but to get that money back, it doesn't happen till next year. And the money coming to pay for that will come via a levy that goes into other people's bills. Funnily enough,
Someone's got to pay for it. There we go.
Someone's got to pay for it. So it's currently going to be others. Now, in reality, there are a number of EII customers, but the cost that they're getting reduced is a relatively small. I mean, we've estimated, we don't know the scale of this cost at the moment. I think that's 100% clear. We don't know how much it will be, and it will fluctuate a little bit depending on who's applied, who qualifies, how much their costs are, how the reductions. It may be around £1 per megawatt hour. That's our rough estimate at the moment, subject to change. Now, we're expecting the charge to really come into effect from April 25. Mm-hmm. So we're a little way off yet. And we're hoping that as we may get some information as to who's registered and things, we might get a bit more guide coming through as to how much that cost might be. But we will get notification in advance, and then it will go through to people.
So this cost will not apply to them, but apply to all of us? Is that how it's going to be done? How do you see it working out then?
I am still awaiting instructions from the industry on the exact technicalities. I would say, in very openness, there are people who've read it in both ways, that it may apply to everybody, and there are people who've read it that it might not apply to those EII customers. So some of those details we really need to get ironed out.
It's not easy, is it, to plan? So if it becomes kind of a blanket, I get it, a bit like a social service, you pay, everyone pays for it, but
exactly,
it's difficult for businesses to plan if it's going to be across the board or subjective.
Yeah, and I think the expectation is everybody pretty much will be paying it. It's just small little details like, do EII customers pay it when they're getting the discount? Why would they pay the levy?
Of course, understood.
So it's more those small technicalities, but yeah, we are expecting it to be on the majority, like 99% of customers.
And when do you think the bills would start then? You think it'll kick in April? Would the bills be from then with the levy or a bit later?
Yeah, so the volume delivery as of April 25, yes. So that aligns with the change in the pricing structure. So it's a lag charge. They're essentially recovering money that's already being paid to pay it back to them.
Right, so that's the first one. Any others?
Yes, we've got the nuclear RAB, which I think people are slowly becoming aware of.
Right.
So Sizewell C has been talked about quite a bit already in general, and how that's going to be a new nuclear option for the UK.
Yeah.
They're starting that process, and it takes a long time. Nuclear is not something that gets done overnight. The way they're building the pricing for the nuclear is going along a RAB model, so the regulated asset base model.
Right.
Aligns most closely with how the CFD model works.
Right.
So there will be an allowed amount of money they can have, but it needs to be paid or given back. So at some point in time, when they are generating their nuclear, it might be they're making more money from selling the nuclear into the market than they're supposed to be making. At that point, they'll start paying us, and the charge would go negative. So it's a complex charge. One of the other big differences, though, is that we've got 15 years probably around of that site being built.
Yeah.
Now, under this RAB model, they would be eligible to have payments to them during that period. And there is no way there'll be any money or offsets. So it might be a more significant cost during that period.
So to summarise, people might remember, obviously, it was a long time ago, electricity market reform, and then there was a strike price set for nuclear way back by the coalition, I think it was. And, that was supposed to do the long-term funding and levels, and there's a lot of criticism around this. I think what the government has tried to do, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is by putting this and then uploading at the front, they're saying, yes, we will help to subsidise the build of this, but eventually the energy generated will give us a longer term payback out of general taxing. Now, the question I'd like to ask you is, do you have any details of whether this payment, again, I assume it'll be uniform, it'll be across the board, but will it mean that if you've contributed over the next 15 years, once it develops, you get all that money back, or does it just go into general, taxation and the government's revenues? How will it work?
It should come back because the scheme for the whole operational phase of the scheme is under this RAB model. So
Right.
if they're getting enough money for their energy to pay back,
Yes.
then yes, the money will come back into the scheme.
Right. And then back to businesses who paid.
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah. It definitely goes into this RAB scheme, and it will be positive or negative depending on which way it's required at that point in time. The challenge really is, though, that we don't know what the energy price will be when they are delivering that energy. So I would not be comfortable sitting here and telling you we will get our money back, because I cannot guarantee you that we will get money back. I can't guarantee we'll get any money back, let alone all of it.
So
yes,
the question is,
I get the principle.
But it's basically, I don't know, you could call it a government subsidy for the nuclear, but we have to pay it. So do you have an idea of how much the cost will be for businesses?
No, absolutely none. I'm
loving this chat, Louise. This is getting better.
I know. I didn't say I was coming with good news. I just said I was coming with you.
So again, when would you think this would kick in? Because I assume they'll have to say it kicks in once the site is given the proper go, not just the permission.
When the proper go-ahead goes. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we started seeing this next year too, in some ways.
Right.
The only information I've been given at the moment is there may be an investment decision at the end of the year.
Right. End of next year or this year?
This year, 2024.
2024, right. And again, in terms of cost, I assume the government will come up with a cost figure so that everyone knows what it will be. But at present, no guidance.
No guidance whatsoever. And it will, they have confirmed that it will be a shorter notice on what the actual levy payment is. There will hopefully be a bit more guidance, and I think it will become relatively stable, hopefully, for the 15 years during the build phase. But we're going to only have short notice after that, 30 days we're talking about.
So it's something businesses should be prepared about. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Any more?
Yes, we've got another one. This one I don't think is as significant. Not as significant. It depends on the uptake.
Right.
It's the hydrogen levy in gas.
Okay.
So and I'm talking about a gas one, so that's quite exciting rather than just electricity.
Yeah.
So the hydrogen levy, it's going to work in a relatively similar way to how the green gas support scheme and the GGL works. So it's around applications for hydrogen generation to go into the grid, and then there's a levy to pay for the part that is going to be subsidised. Now, again, you're going to ask me, do we have any scale of this cost? None whatsoever. We don't know, because we don't yet know how much uptake there's going to be in, hydrogen generation and what schemes will get approved for the levy to be applied to. We hope that the charge will come in around the end of 2026. So we've got a little bit more time till this one comes in. The Treasury is actually funding it up until the levy comes in. So they are going to start paying. So we might get a bit of a feel once we see some of the people who've been signed up to the support scheme for the hydrogen generation to get a feel for what scale this levy might come in at.
Do you think this levy will be universal again, or will it just apply in certain sectors?
I would be surprised if it wasn't universal. In the same way the green gas levy has been universal, I think it will be universal. I would imagine they will try and address the challenge they feel they've had with that on the volumetric side versus the meter point.
Yeah.
So I think that will probably be what they're aiming to get sorted before 2026, but we will wait and see. There's reasons why they didn't go down that route straight away for green gas levy. Okay,
so we've had energy intensive, we've had nuclear, and we've had hydrogen. Any more for any more? I'm in for a penny, in for a pound.
One final one that I will mention, but it's less likely, I think. The others have all had some sort of sign-offs, essentially. So I'd be surprised if even an election really made significant changes. The final one is the carbon capture subsidy.
Right, yes.
Now, this is still going to require a lot of government sign-off. So this is much more up for debate, and an election could change things a lot. But it's around trying to, again, green, capture that carbon, put it away somewhere that makes it less affecting the atmosphere. And how does that get paid for? And obviously, if something is energy related, it goes onto an energy bill. Therefore, we are anticipating that it's quite likely they will try and do some levy associated to this as well.
But that one is, of all of them, the most kind of woolly, because could change. I mean, we have no idea. Right? I mean, it is quite interesting because if you look at all the things you've said, now, let's be honest, no one wants to pay anything, right?
No.
But they all do make sense in terms of kind of where we're trying to get to, because you need our heavy industries to help build a lot of it, and they are being, many would say, penalised compared to their compatriots abroad. Nuclear is a vital part of where we're going. Hydrogen is part of it, and of course, capturing carbon. The question I put to you though is, if I'm a business having heard this, I just think, gosh, I'm going to have to find money from somewhere.
Absolutely. And I think that really comes back to the same question we asked at the start. It's the government is choosing where to put this cost.
Yeah.
They have chosen to do this, and for one reason and another, they don't feel general taxation is the right place. But in many ways, it's just taxation under a different guise, because there are very few people in the UK who are not in one way or another reliant on energy. And that is throughout businesses and throughout homes. And it's not easy, I don't think, to decide whether to put it into taxation or whether to put it into a levy.
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, we'll all pay because we're all consumers, whether it's, my chip shop has to put their bills up, then I'll put an extra 5p on my chips probably. But,
exactly, we all pay it. But I'd probably put it into general taxation. I think it would make it neater and cleaner. And I think people would be less questioning on some of it. But at the same time, we are here but to do what the government have directed and try and make people as aware of what is going on as possible.
What can you do to help? So thank you for outlining all these things. If people want to get some more information, and is there any way they can plan for any of this?
It's tough to plan for it when we don't know what the scale of the costs can be. I don't really see what they can do at the moment. I think an awareness and an interest is as good as you can get. Now, EMRS and places have got some great information on the nuclear. If people are really interested in starting to go into the technical details on that one, is probably the most, I'm guessing, the largest of the actual scale of costs. I haven't seen the details, but funding nuclear isn't going to come cheap. And also it's going to potentially grow as more get signed off. We've talked about Sizewell C. They're already talking about a place in Wales. There may be more that come under this. So I think if people are interested, go and have a look and start reading up on the nuclear side of things. The others, I think there's less information really out there at the moment. There's obviously the supercharger details that explaining the technicalities behind why we're getting the levy, but there's less on what the levy is actually going to be and how it works.
What can you do as Total Energies? Have you got any information that you can help people navigate all of this?
We've shared some already, I believe. Our sales teams have had a briefing similar to this with some details. We'll be updating things as we get further information and sharing it via the sales teams to go to customers. We're doing this chat now. We're also obviously supportive of some of the changes that the government are directing around sharing of proportionality on bills. That comes back to what we talked about at the start and how that all goes through. And so, there'll be additional information coming at some point on the websites and things to guide that detail. And there'll be further details as and when we can shared there too.
Exciting times though for you, because obviously, change of government possible, policy change is possible. This all affects what we will, the risks that businesses face.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your time, Louise. Really good to talk to you.